Okay.
Well, the screen is found.
Yeah. And every one of us. Ready?
Say when two people learn, four.
Right.
One person, and then it goes to one person.
So we're at the end of this Maimer. Vayera Hashem Amra Machasa Tofreish Ayin Dalad. Okay. And let's review what we learned. So, as we spoke, the Rebbe Rashab is summing up the whole last, I would say, 10-15 Memorim. Just for the record, this is Maimer 56 in the whole Hemshech. So this Maimer is summing up, I would say, the last 10, even more, something like 12 Maimarim, where the main theme was the interface of Chochmas Dema, bridging the Meitzel and the Netzalim, the source and the emanations, meaning the undefined source, bridging that with the defined emanations, as we said, not creatures but Atzilus, the spheres of Atzilus. And he also added interfacing it with the Neshamas and Hashem, meaning the Neshamas of Atzilus. So, in explaining it, we went through many different levels. The bottom line is that Chachma is the gift, the special, unique bridge that Hashem created that allows us, meaning the Netzalim, to reach places that are beyond definition, and allows those places to come down into our understanding to some extent. So really Chachma has in it the two opposites. On one hand, it has the ability to abstract, like you said, Koyach HaFla, Pella, and there's the Koyach HaYerida, Aleph, to bring down, to teach. And ultimately, these two become one. And where do they actually meet? They meet in Primius Chachmas Dema. So Primius Chachmas Dema, which is higher than Chitzenius Chachmas Dema, the inner part of the so-called unconscious, is the place where Atik, pleasure, comes down and becomes one with. In a sense, like he was saying, Chachma is pleasure, but it's but at the same time, the Chachma is still Chachmas Dema. It's not Atik any longer. And it's Mailim, as he said, it conceals, but it doesn't conceal like a garment. It conceals like the Helam Ha'atzmi, which means a fundamental type of concealment that it's just forever concealed, not because of not concealment as a negative. When we usually say concealment as a negative, what I mean by negative, I don't mean as an evil, but as a compromise. So you can't, for example, transmit the light, so you have to conceal it in order to transmit it, to reach. But then there's a Helam Ha'atzmi, there are some things that are just fundamentally concealed. Just to give an example, when we say Kodesh Kodashim, nobody's allowed to go into it all year round. It's not because it's negative concealment, because Kodesh Kodashim Be'etzim is a place that's higher than Revelation. And the same thing in our own unconscious, there are levels that are just fundamentally not shayach, they're not capable of being revealed. Just like a person, libel pumale galia, there are things inside our intimate self you just can't express in words. Not because the person, someone else can't receive it yet, and so you'll give an example and you'll explain it, spoon feed it step by step. It's because fundamentally it remains Helam. That's Chachmas Dema. So Atik, pleasure, as he said, is even higher than Helam. You can't even call it a Helam.
But they're both in Panemius Chachmas Dema. What's the purpose of Chitzonius Chachmas Dema?
Chitzonius Chachmas Dema is ultimately the closer link. It's like basically Chitzonius Chachmas Dema is the interface between Chachmas Dema and Chachma Gluya. Because in other words, Chitzonius Chachmas Dema, its real purpose is, in a sense, it's unconscious that has a Helam only relative to Chachma Gluya. So think of it this way: if Chachmas Dema, Primius Chachmas Dema, is the place where there's the unconscious always remains a state of unconscious, Chitzonius Chachmas Dema is a state of unconscious, but its relative, meaning, is the place where the water, the drops of water drop into Chachma Gluya. Because if you recall, he said it's not such a the jump is not that big.
Before we learned that Ratzon and Tainig, Ratzon was on Chatzonius and Penimus of Chachmas was Tainig. So it seems to be you're throwing now everything into more of a.
There is a section where he did speak about the Golgotha. I think that Ratzon is not even Chatzonius Chachmas Tema, because Ratzon is not even Chachma. If I recall from how we learned it, it was like this. There's two levels on the unconscious mind. That's Chachmas Chutzenius and Pnimis Chachmas Tema. Golgotha, which is the skull, is maybe wrong. Maybe he did connect it to Chutzenius Chachmas Tema. Is that what you recall? Maybe. It was somewhat connected. No, definitely Chutzenius. You're right. But I'm almost sure that he said
that a whole different shift in the way it's being expressed now.
Was it that the Penimus of Golgotha was
it says the Penimus of Golgotha has something.
Well, the space between the Golgotha and
right. That is the
that is the Penimus of
Chachmas Tema. That's the Das Hanel. Yeah. That's what he said. The Das of Atik. Right. But that's not the Golgotha. The Golgotha, I have to go back and see, but
it could be just Arik.
This is part of the whole discussion with the Eitz Chaim that I was looking in.
But I didn't have to relate it to this part of the body now, because before it seems that the whole thing was on.
No. I think Golgotha. When you speak Golgotha, you're talking about it in the context of Ratzon and Tainug, not in context of Chachmas Tema.
I didn't bring up Golgotha. You just put up.
No, Ratzon is.
When we talk Ratzon and Tainug, the Ratzon was the
outer part of Kesser.
It was Arik, which is Ratzon.
Right. That is not.
Of and
no. That
was
Penimis. No. One
was going one way, one was going the other way.
One is Penimis, one is Chutzenius. That's clear. Atik and Arich. Atik and Arich are general levels. Chachmas Tema is more specific. Chachmas Tema, there's a Chachma in Atik, there's a Chachma in Arich. Remember that we're talking here a level that's within Ratzon and Tainig are general levels.
Fine, but one was Chutzonius and one was...
Yeah, so general
Atik...
Atik...
Now it's saying both of them are traveling along...
Hold on. Atik and Arich is Pnimis and Chutzenius.
Right.
Chachma in general is Pnimis. In the Pnimis of Chachma itself, there's a Chutzenius Chachmas Tema and Pnimis Chachmas Tema. That's how I would... That's what it's going on here. Okay, so go back now. So this Helam Ha'atzmi from Chachmas Pnimis Chachmas Tema is also the root of the darkest, the Helam that comes down through Golus. Golus, or when a father is distressed about his child being hurt, falling. And this Golus is a concealment, but it's on outside it's Gevura, complete Gevura, because you see complete concealment Golus. On the other hand, Bepnimis is the deepest type of love, because concealment, the care, the distress is only as a result of the deep love. How do we reveal that Helam Ha'atzmi? That's what we were concluding here. We reveal it through standing up against all the impediments and all the challenges of Golus, of the concealment, not compromising ourselves and our integrity, and also being mahapech, the Nefesh Habamis, to appreciate Elokus. By doing that, you reveal the Helam Ha'atzmi. To explain that, we discussed how the neshama comes down the mata into a guf of Nefesh Habamis, and how it trains the Nefesh Habamis and acclimates it on its terms, on the Nefesh Habamis terms, to appreciate godliness. And he said that it does it through the hisbonenus, through contemplation, that the Nefesh Habamis can understand that nothing creates itself, the understanding of the Ayin that gives life to the Yesh. The Ayin is the Iker. And as the Nefesh Habamis becomes more and more refined in that direction, to the point that it's broken. As we said, the word Ata Haresa Ladas. Das, Haresa also from the word, Ladas, also from the word breaking, like you break the klippa, the shell of a nut, so then the fruit emerges, and the neshama could then have Riyas HaMuchus to actually see the essence of Elokus, or even down below. And this last section, Reish Chav Zayin, we were learning how the Asad Lave, this will be revealed. And it's like a union between Neshama and Guf, that on one hand the Neshama is the one that trained the Nefesh Habamis and the Nefesh Habamis sees things in a way that is much more mukhshis, because when we see the tangible world, adds a dimension of tangibility, concrete, something the neshama does not have, because neshama by nature is ethereal and spiritual, subtle. So, on the other hand, the Nefesh Habamis is only ideas and riyas hametzias. It could see something as almost as if it's seeing it, but it's psari echza, as he said. My flesh beholds echza, meloshin targum, not riyah mamish, so it's almost as if it sees it. And then, on the other hand, the neshama sees it mamish. La'asad love, what will happen will be a union of these two milas. That's basically what we learned here. Both things. On one hand, it'll be tangible because the nefesh habamis will have it, and that's why it says that la'asad love neshama nezenis min haguf. The nefesh habamis will actually nourish the soul, because it will give the soul what it didn't have on its own, which is a tangible, like it is in this world, the yesh. That the yesh amiti can be seen in the yesh hanivra. And neshama doesn't relate to the concept of a yesh. Neshama relates to the concept of of divine light, of bittul, of spiritual, of not mitzvahs. But once the nefesh habamis will be so refined, and itself will relate to Lakuz this way, it will have that dimension. On the other hand, we'll also have riyas hamahus on the highest levels, because the neshama will have that. He said that's ayin ba'ayin yiro, the two ayins. One is the ayin of the nefesh habamis is seeing, and the other is the ayin of the nefesh halakis. Just a second. He says that's the difference between Mesim Mashiach and Tchis HaMesim.
Oh, we have to put on the clock on the.
Just a moment. Where's the ayins? Two ayins. No, but okay, right.
Hello.
Okay. So he said there's two stages.
What time are you coming?
There's two stages. The first stage is Yemei Mashiach.
What time? Yeah. This is Lang. Yes.
First stage is Yemei Mashiach. Ben Peres Yosef. What's the title of Ben Peres Yosef Kipshuta? What's Peres?
Somebody will be there at 8:30.
And the second is Ben Peres Alei Ayin. So Yemei Mashiach is mainly the light that comes through Berurim. But Ben Peres Alei Ayin is even higher than the eye. Tchis HaMesim, I'm just reviewing it again. So, yeah, is the Riyah that's higher than Hasaga.
Is this Moshe? Oh, okay.
So one is Chetzenis Chachmas Tema, which is only the Metzias, and then there's Primis Chachmas Tema, what's Atzmis Mohus HaDover.
What did you want?
Okay.
What do we want? Too short.
So Hasaga adds that it's in Primis, that you're really part of you. Riyah can be something outside of you, you don't really understand it. So he's saying Hasaga, when Hasaga Samahus is like Riyah, then it's even higher than Riyah. Because when you see something, you see the Mahus, but you don't necessarily integrate it. You could see something wonderful, doesn't mean you get it. Hasaga is when you get it. So he says, that's what he says on top here. And Riyah Shib Musa Dover has a Lamaylam Hasaga. Ach Kasher Gam Hasaga Tiba Musa Dover Til Lamaylam B'chinas Hariyah. V'zer Alay Ayin Lamaylam B'chinas Ayin. That will be Tchis HaMesim. Okay. This is when it will go to the higher level of the Mamutza, which becomes a Keli, or which becomes a channel, a bridge, to get into Atzmis itself. We said the source of it all, the parentheses, we discussed it briefly, is that it's in the Helam Atzmi, that Atzmus encompasses everything. So So that's the source of the Helam Atzmi. Okay.
I'm not clear on the difference what's going to happen next with Mashiach and Tchias HaMesim. And how it relates to this remark.
Well, he says like this. I'm reading the end of the chapter, page Tov Samach, like 5-7 lines from the top. After we elevate the Yemei Mashiach to the Primis and Atzmus of Chachmas Tema, Shetia Asog B'chinas Asogas Mahus, the B'chinas Primis Chachmas Tema, he'll reach a place where the Asoga will be actually the Asoga of Mahus, not just Metzias.
This is
Tchias HaMesim. That's Yemei Mashiach. Yisala b'Tchias HaMesim Tia Asog B'chinas Mahus v'Atzmusah. What he's saying is that Tchias HaMesim is like going even higher than the Mamutza. So basically, Yemei Mashiach will reach a level where you will reach Primis Chachmas Tema.
right.
Whereas today, for example, we only reach Chechenis Chachmas Tema.
Exactly.
And Tchias HaMesim, the Primis Chachmas Tema will lead us into Atzmus itself. V'zeh ein doim l'cha mamish. L'cha meaning mamish you, Atzmus. V'yedu da Asoga hu b'chinas yesh. This is what we ended. That Asoga is a yesh, because Asoga means you understand something. There's something that understands. It's not complete bittul. Hasoga means that I exist and I understand something.
In other words, all the Chachma, there's no Pnimis, there's no Chachma Tzmor, because that needs to be revealed, what's under the unconscious will be conscious at that point. That's why there's still Chachma. There's no need to have the Chachma Tzmor, you're saying.
It's your idea, it's easy.
No, that's not what he's saying. Chachmas Tom will always be there. It's just a bridge. It'll be a bridge.
No, it's a bridge. It's a bridge now, but it's going to be revealed, everything.
It won't be a home anymore for
No, the bridge always remains a bridge. The question is whether what happens on this side of the bridge, whether we can use it, can relate to it. The bridge is there, but we don't relate to it. It's that we're separate. It's through our bittul and through our veda that we are able to reach into there. And once you reach into there, he's saying, he's saying, Riya is Ayin Amiti. Vasog is B'chinas Yesh Amiti. In other words, Riya, seeing something, is more of a bitteldik experience. Hasog is when it becomes part of you.
It's like Yadaiti for Yisi.
It doesn't say that expression.
I understand.
I don't know if I would use that here.
You become so much involved in the Ein Sof that it's integrated in you. What's left of you? Not much.
That's reserved for very, very high level. I don't know if this is.
You said Atzmos, you're the level of Atzmos, so how do you get any higher than
but
that?
there are many, because there are many ways to appreciate that. Yadaita v'Yisuf, is a very strong expression that's used in very unique situations. It's not used here, so I can distinguish if you want me to give you explanations of distinguishing the two.
Okay.
Is it relevant now? You want me to explain it? I mean,
I've never returned out an explanation.
it depends. No, because it's going off on a different subject completely.
We can take it offline.
No, it's not about offline. It's about it's a distraction. But I could say, look, it doesn't say here the expression Yadaita v'Yisuf. It's intentional. If you wanted to say it, you would have said it. There are places. So the question is, why not?
Yeah.
Yudaiti, what does that mean?
He means if I were him, I would be. If I knew him, I would be him.
Oh.
Doesn't say that here. He's not talking about that type of achdus.
Okay.
Not talking about that level of achdus.
Okay.
Of Atzmos.
That could be the Yadaita v'Yisuf is used when the Rebbe Rashab was learning the Kutei Torah. He became one with Atzmos. That's where that expression is used. So for example, will there be a difference between a Rebbe and regular people, between Mashiach and regular people? So even then, there's also differences of level of the levels of how.
Even now, we'll have this kind of a saga.
If Mashiach does his job, he's.
No, but it says one will not teach the other. Kikulim yedesi. Everyone will know us Atzmus.
So you don't need teachers.
1 second, but then it says the Mektanim v'Agzelam. It says there'll be Kotten and Gadol.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that means clearly there'll be levels. It says it many places. The thing is, the Kotten will have a connection to the Etzem just like the Gadol has, but there'll still be a Kotten. Because in Giluyim we'll still have a structure. Existence will have a structure. No one ever said everything's going to disappear. Our individuality will not be annihilated in Mesa Mashiach.
There
will be millions of people.
It's a Gili Atzmos, but it's not Atzmos.
No, who says Atzmos is a contradiction to diversity?
It is in some way. Atzmos
Today maybe it
no,
seems.
it's not. There is a level, different levels in Atzmos. That's why I learned it.
But there's a dimension of Atzmos where diversity is not a contradiction. On the contrary, the more diversity, the more Atzmos, because Atzmos reflects in infinite amount of combinations. In other words, Achdus is not the concept that one is a contradiction to many is only in our logic. In Atzmos, you don't say there's such a thing. It's a contradiction when the many don't relate to the one, when everybody's doing their own thing. But if you had 1,000 million parts, each one aligned to what God wants, that's unity. Unity does not have to be that everyone's doing the same thing.
Plus, you're saying there's Giluyim, so there has to be.
Yeah, there will be Giluyim in also love. That's why it's not just a question. It's not
almost a contradiction too.
Well, it's not a contradiction when you come to appreciate that Atzmos is not bound by the word one or many, and that you could have an expression of Atzmos in many different ways.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You know, you could, for example, we have this Chochmah, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. Today, they're all different faculties. Lost love, there'll also be different faculties, but it'll be very clear how each one is an expression of Elokus and Atzmos in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a question when you still see them as different forces, or you see them as different forces, but they all reflect one reality.
And that's all part of Tchiyas HaMesim also.
Tchiyas HaMesim is the highest level in the sense where with the Yesh itself. Look, there's a way of relating to the Kus, to being Mavatli yourself. There's no Yesh. There's just complete sublimation. For example, let's talk about Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, we don't eat. We fast. We do all the 5 different afflictions, Inuyim, and we try to be angelic. We try to get out of our tzir, the way our shape and form of every day of the year, to elevate. Then it says in Chassidus that Purim in some ways is higher because Purim is Yom Kippur, right, and it's brought down into food and into a meal and into a celebration.
That's like
now, what does that mean? Does it mean Purim is really higher? The fact is in Torah there's no holier day than Yom Kippur. But it means in a certain dimension, Yom Kippur, Purim has something Yom Kippur doesn't have, because Yom Kippur, the only way to get there is through abstaining. And Purim, you can do it through being mislabish, through doing it. So you need both. Now, that's why you have an Avodah in Avodas Hashem, you have times where we go out of ourselves, and there are times we have to bring it down. They're all legitimate. It all comes down to where you are, where you stand. And then within the day itself, when we say, for example, Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim, the 3 pillars. So generally speaking, Gemilas Chasadim is drawing down, giving to others. Avodah is Gvura, Mamat Lamayla, where it's more inward, you're davening or korban, you're elevating, you're giving yourself to God. And Torah is like Tiferes, is the combiner, where Torah is both taking Elokus, the Chochmas Elokus, and bringing it down through Hasaga and through learning. So you have in Yiddishkeit, you'll always have different so-called kavim, different approaches, where they all complement each other. Each one serves a different purpose. You'll always hear in many sikhs you'll see this, the 3 kavim. Sometimes something is much more elokus, so it's a higher level of elokus, but it's less us. For example, Asus L'Eila that comes before Asus L'Tata, when you're inspired from above, and not from within, is going to be a higher level per se. But it's lower in the sense that it's not yours. It's like when you say a person has more pleasure from so when you have $1, one measure of your own is more appreciated by you than 9 measures you get from above or from your friend. Why? Because 9 is more in quantity, but in quality you're going to appreciate, and you're not going to blow it so fast if you earned it. So you have both things. You have sometimes a Gili Mamai, like when we say Nisan, Iyar, Sivan. So Nisan was Mamai Lamata, the Eibishter took us out of Mitzrayim. Iyar, we work through the birur of the Nefesh Abamis, Sfiras HaEmer, where there's no revelation, there's no Yom Tov. We work 49 days. And then that brings us to the 3rd level that came through our efforts. Now we get Matan Torah, the 50th day. You have to count 49, you don't count the 50th. I'm just trying to show that so many places the same concept. The Asad level will be the ultimate union between our efforts that makes it part of us, that we own it. Hasaga is when you own something. Riyah, in this context, is not, you don't own it. When you see something beautiful, the Eibishter shows you suddenly a beautiful sight. So yes, you're seeing Mahus, but it's not you. Someone's showing it to you. Hasaga could be the opposite. You don't see it, so you're not seeing the thing itself, but it's yours. So if you learn about it and you hear about it, you appreciate it in a different way than if you just saw it. Which was greater? The answer is, it depends what you're talking about. If you're talking about the Gilui itself, Riyah and Giluyim is greater. If you're talking about earning it, owning it, internalizing it, the Hasaga is greater. Shmiya, in other words, hearing about it. Now, can these two come together? That's the point here. They do come together. So today, when we learn Chassidus, for example, at best we have Hasaga. Like you said, when the Nefesh Elokis explains to the Nefesh Abamis that you didn't create yourself, that there's an ayin inside of everything, so the yesh starts to say, something? I think I'm it, and it's not true. I'm not it. There's something more. I'm talking about a yesh that's receptive. And the Nefesh and the Neshama works hard in educating. We learn Chassidus, you learn Torah.
Who does these bonuses? The Nefesh Elokis or the...
This is the common question. I mean, if you really break it down, it's the Nefesh HaSichlis.
Yeah.
But Pashtus, it goes like this. The Neshama is more or less, they become intertwined. When your mind is working right now, it can be a combination of your Nefesh Elokis, Nefesh Abamis all in one. For example, let's say your mind tells you now, I'm hungry. Now, if you eat the food, L'Shem Shamayim, the Nefesh Elokis has made your mind. But if you just go and indulge, it's like it's everything is intertwined. At any given moment, because we don't have even though we have two nefashos inside of us, once they're within us, they become like one snowball. And it's hard to say. Sometimes someone can do something that is shalei l'shma. In same thing, you could have two combinations. The gavana is to refine ourselves to a point where your mind, even if the mind of the nefesh habam is that has, for example, the neshama doesn't get hungry. So it has to be the nefesh habam is the behema in us that has the yesh needs, the needs of food, of kavod, of other things. Now that's part of nature. It's part of human nature, part of the nefesh habamis. The nefesh elokis wouldn't have any such needs. But nefesh habamis does have such needs. And it has impulses. So the first step, that's the whole point in Tanya, the whole point of Chassidus is the refinement. The first step is the nefesh elokis get a hold over your taivas. Let's start with that. Not everything you want, you have to indulge in. Later stages, you're actually starting to train the nefesh habamis to think differently. When a person learns Chassidus, it basically is the mind of the nefesh habamis trying to understand Elokus. So it's almost like the neshama, the nefesh elokis is like training the nefesh habamis, but it's all happening like side by side within our neshama. It's almost hard to separate. Like when you're learning something, you have geshmak in it. How much of it is the geshmak of your nefesh habamis? How much of your nefesh elokis? It's almost impossible to tell. Because bottom line is you're learning Torah. On the other hand, your nefesh habamis is also involved. So I don't even know if you can say here's where it starts and here's where it stops. Now, for example, if a person uses his mind for something, God forbid, that's prohibited, or let's say neutral, and then uses it for purposes that are not holy, then clearly nefesh habamis has taken control of that person's mind. For example, you can learn chochmas chitzenius, l'shem shemayim. You can learn chochmas atera and use it for bad things, like samovis becomes like a poison. On its own, Torah is kedusha. Anyway, we have to remember in Ayin Beis, a lot of what I'm saying here is like a given. To learn from other places. I'm explaining it, but the bottom line is just like he didn't. Whatever I said here right now, it doesn't say specifically, but it's hinted to. So basically, Bisman has the nefesh elokis is training the nefesh habamis to relate to Elokus, and once it begins to relate, it can come close, as he said, mepsari echzalaka. It can come close to look at the world as a moshel for godliness. As he said, the moshel is the nimshel. The nimshel is mislabish in the moshel. So at best we can achieve in our time, meaning today, is that a nefesh habamis can look at the world and constantly remind itself this is godly koyach, and even look at specifics and say this is a moshel for this part of Elokus. Even now when we're talking about chokhmah and all these things, it's a moshel. When we talk about our mind, the galgalta, the crown, the kesed, the skull, the brain, the avir above, we're seeing our physical body as being somewhat of a mashal, which is not just a mashal, it's actually nishtalshal from. It evolves from the spiritual dimensions of it. So when you look at your body and you start seeing it that way, when I say body, I mean everything that's in the material, a nefesh habamis can come close, as he said, to riyah.
Right.
No, if you understand it so well, it's almost as if you see it. But you can't call it actual riyah. Because you can't, because there's still a layer that blocks. Whereas the neshama does have riyah. And then what's talking now is once there's the Aveda of all these thousands of years, Birur HaGashmis, there will come a point where will be transparency. That Mashiach comes, that's what he's talking about, Ayin Beis Yiro, that will actually see. When it says, V'niglu kved Hashem v'ro kol basar yachdav. Godliness will be revealed and all flesh will see. It's not a miracle. It's through working long enough in the refinement of the flesh that we get to a point where the flesh can begin to see. It doesn't bring this pasuk here per se. But Ayin Beis Yiro, that's the two ayins. So on one hand, the Nefesh Habamis adds the tangibility, the yesh now can relate to the yesh amiti. The neshama adds the element of the ayin amiti, the level of the neshama of riyas amachus.
Okay.
And basically they become combined in the stages here. So he says Yemesha Mashiach is the first level. I'm sorry, there's one level where you reach to mamutza of Chochmas Tima. I'm just reading here. That's the Chutzein. Then you come to the premise of Chachmas Timo. That's also Yemesha Mashiach. 1 second. And through that, this is the words. V'zeu sh'aydei mamutza the Chachmas Timo dafke boyim hanashamas v'chein hatzom l'bchinas ha'elyena sheba'amutza v'aydei zeh boyim gam ken l'bchinas atzmas ein sof shalamayim l'bchinas ha'amutza. That this is how the Netzolim and the Neshamas come to the higher level of the mamutza, which is premise Chachmas Timo. And through that they come to that which is higher than the mamutza, and that's Atzmas. He says that specifically. That's spelled out.
That's with Mashiach.
Yeah. The revelation of it.
That somebody who's a perfect tzaddik, who was a perfect Baal Tshuva,
I guess you could have a taste of it, but even for them, Mashiach will accomplish something.
Because he has his complete animal soul, the strength of his animal soul.
I'm saying, so there's still an element of it, but remember, even for a tzaddik and an ultimate Baal Tshuva.
We're not differentiating now from the group.
You're asking a different question. What will happen? What will be what will Mashiach contribute to a real tzaddik?
No, because right now, we're really talking about when the goof transforms itself. There's a difference between a nefesh Bahamza and the goof. There's two. It's not. Here it's treated together.
Yeah.
And that difference is probably what is the important thing in Mashiach.
I don't know if that's the only way to explain it. Of the biggest, greatest tzaddik and the greatest Baal Tshuva, when Mashiach will come, will also reach a higher level. It's all relative. They will reach the goof and nefesh habamis will both reach a higher level.
But the goof is transformed. But now tzaddikim, the goof necessarily is not. They see they.
I don't know. Sometimes it says it is. It depends what. It depends who.
There's no animal soul, but the goof is still there. The goof is still an impediment, so to speak.
You're just quoting from somewhere, or you're saying? I'm
conjecturing.
And Tanya says that even the greatest tzaddik down here cannot reach the levels of Ava V'yira as he is L'mayla. You could say it's the goof, whatever you want to call it, the material world, whatever the reason is. So even a tzaddik who does all, remember a tzaddik is two things. It's not just his avodah, his neshama happens to be a higher neshama. So even the greatest tzaddik still cannot reach the highest heights. It's man hagolus. That's why Moshe and the Rebbe, they all aspire for Mashiach. What that means, their heights, that's another discussion, completely not relevant to this Weimer. It's not even going here.
Moshe Ben just got it for a few minutes.
Shar Hanun,
just a few minutes.
And stuff like that. And look, you see, the fact is that whatever Gimel Tammuz means, the fact is the Gul is not here, and the Rebbe said maybe he did everything he could, we didn't do something, so that also affects him. Because that tzaddik Rebbe is connected to his generation. So there's a lot of ways to look at it, whether it's the tzaddik on his own lacking something, or is the tzaddik lacking it because his people are lacking it. Like the Arizal said, Al Chet and Yom Kippur, because a neshama Klovis has everybody's sins in them. So he doesn't necessarily say it for him, he says it for us. There's a lot of ways to explain it, but bottom line is, the Gula will be a Gula for everybody, and everybody will benefit from it. It's not just for the lower ones among us that haven't finished the Aveda. Anyway, the point is, okay, and then he goes on to explain the difference between the two stages of Yemesha Mashiach and Tchis HaMesim. Basically, the difference being that one is still a level of of Riyah. That's Yemei Mashiach.
Riyah and Itzi, yeah? Is they both still there?
And Hasaga, yeah. But then you'll come to a point where the Hasaga will be even higher than the Riyah.
And that's only when you go.
That's when you get to the
And the Tchias Amazing is when the actual group.
Yesh, yeah. That's what's amazing. The actual Yesh of the Guf returns, which means it's the Yesh Amitis and the Yesh Amitis. Ultimately, the ultimate fusion and is where Ayin and Yesh become one. And they each feed into each other. It has to be that way. You can't just have Yesh alone, because Yesh alone, even if it's Yesh Amiti, it's lacking the Giluyim.
Yeah.
It's lacking the sense of awe and bittul. And on the other hand, Ayin alone doesn't have the Yesh, the Etzem. And you really need them both. It's a constant flow. That's why it says, Chassidus speaks, the Rebbe brings it very often from different Mamorim, that even the mile of the Yesh is revealed in the Yesh through the Ayin. Oyer is Megala. Remember, it's the Kav and Oyer Ein Sof that created the Yesh. So even though it created something it itself doesn't have, but the power of Atzmus to create the Yesh is transmitted through the Ayin, through the Oyer. And the way we go backwards, when we trace the steps, it's also, the Yesh itself can't just jump to Atzmus. It has to go through the levels of Ishtalshalos, of Bittul and so on, and refinement. So that's the beauty of it. So it's like you have a whole Seder Ishtalshalos to the interface is necessary for us to retrace the steps. And ultimately it becomes a fusion of Neshama and Guf. Because then you could ask the question, Mashiach comes, who needs a Neshama? The Guf is Atzmus and that's it.
Yeah,
But it's not the case. Even Atzmus wanted it to be in a revealed way. Because then you could argue right now also we don't even need Mashiach for that reason. The Yashir is Atzmus, but it's not on our terms. Only God knows it. And we don't. So it needs to be in a place where it's completely revealed. And that's the concept.
It has to be improvement.
Is that a paradox? It is a paradox, but at the same time it's completely understandable.
It has to be an improvement from what existed before the creation.
Yeah, of course. And then it continues to grow. And then it continues to grow more and more. And I'll add something even more. Here's just an example that we all can relate to. It's like Rotzei and Shuv. If somebody sits in shul all day davening and learning, and in the real way, you tell them that's not enough. Same in Ateva, you have to go out and make a dir b'tachtenim and deal with other Jews. Then there's the other way around. If someone's outside all the time and busy with transforming the world, you say also there's a thing called Shabbos, there's a time of davening, there's a time where you have to go inward. And someone say, which one is it? The answer is both. This one is more Ayin, this one is more Yesh. And they both have to feed each other. And for some people, for example, they need a little more Ayin, they're too much Yesh. And for some people, too much Yesh, too much Ayin, and a little more Yesh. Meaning Yesh not as in you have to be a Yesh ego. I mean Yesh that you have to be involved more in refining the world. So this is how it reflects itself in a very technical way. I remember when the Rebbe started Mivtzayim in Lamed Daled, in 74. So in the beginning with the mitzvah tanks, everybody was going, all the yeshiva guys were going all week long to Manhattan, etc. At some point...
I was in Ayin Beis, in Hadar Torah, and we did Mitzvahim.
Okay. No, the Mitzvahim were being done, but then when it really became full-blown with the mitzvah tanks, then everybody was going to Manhattan, and then after a few months, the Rebbe stopped it, and the Rebbe said that, it's good as a beginning, there has to be Seder Yeshiva, and Mitzvahim then became the Seder on Friday afternoons after Seder. So, you see from there, in other words, a Bach is supposed to be in Yeshiva learning. That's his main tafkid at that point, before he goes on to the world and so on. And then comes a point where you have to also be, it's all a balance. This is just on a very technical level, the balance between, doing something that's more connected to or you're doing something more connected to Kalim. All the people asked questions on the Rebbe. The Rebbe said, it says, Kshet atzmachat chila, v'achachach kshet achere. First bind yourself before you bind others. Some say people are not perfect, but first work on yourself many years before you go out to work with others. And the Rebbe's answer to that is that number one, it's a pekuach nefesh today. Fire is burning. You're walking down the street, and fire is burning. You don't start thinking about yourself. You do whatever it takes. And secondly, that the many generations of kshet atzmacha, the Aveda was been done primis for many, many years. And not that the Rebbe is negating that you have to do kshet atzmacha. Obviously, do as much as you can. The fact is, I see personally that, and for many people, that when you work with others, it makes you work with yourself more. And today, people who just work with themselves, lav dafka goes, it becomes very self-oriented. We were reading Friday night. The Rebbe says, someone doesn't want to go out, the Rebbe says he wants to stay in Brooklyn and learn Torah all day, and daven all day. Why? Because out there's a Yetzer Hara. The Rebbe said there's a Yetzer Hara in Brooklyn too. And in some ways it's even stronger than the Yetzer Hara out there. And he goes into very, very aggressive, very sharp words there about people who stay and are just self-contained and just take care of themselves, and they waste their time and waste other people's time. Anyway, it's already 8. You guys, I never even got to this last piece.
Well, you want to do it?
As the Rebbe said,
This is very difficult. You want to say wait till Sunday? If we do it Sunday all together, we should do it Sunday all together because it's such a summary, this piece.
Okay, we can do that.
Why not daven about a million every time?
Wouldn't be fair if we went ahead.
Okay.
So
it's a review of Perek Reish
I'd like to
Chaf
review today's class on the thing. I hope I can get it up soon.
Up to ask them. I can't even do it. They tried. It's not.
Can you email it?
It could be put up somewhere. We could put it up on our website maybe. Okay, I have to ask the guys.